And this is the magic that an advisor does with a client on a daily basis, is that impact of wealth. We're not trying to drive you to this. It is, what is the one unique life experience that you want to have? And that is the value that an advisor brings.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Advice Business Podcast. Kelsey, there's a puzzle I have for you today that we need to solve. It's a puzzle we've talked about a bunch before, but we haven't solved it. So today's the day. Okay. This is the day we solve this puzzle. So Here's the puzzle. We talk to advisors all the time, every day. I think everyone agrees that they get retained, and what their clients like the most about their relationship is the quote unquote client experience. That's what advisors talk about. If we give them a good client experience, they're going to hire us, they're going to keep us. But what we hear advisors say makes a good experience, what's the definition of that? What does that even mean? What we tend to hear is all the human stuff, all of the connection, all of the conversation, all of how an advisor is going to understand who these human people are and what's important to them, and build a deep human relationship over time. That makes a good experience from their perspective. And I think from our perspective, you could also add in all different components to the definition of, what else that might mean. But that's what we hear a lot. But the challenge is, how do you scale that? If that's the thing you're getting hired for, if that's the thing that makes your customer happy, how do you make that sort of squishiness repeatable? How do you do that consistently in your business and have that not just be the onus of maybe the primary advisor? How do you recreate that with other advisors that are going to be on your team? So Kelsey, how are you solving that puzzle for us today?
Wow, I'm solving it by myself. I'm definitely not solving it by myself. I'll say that. So I love the tee up. We do grapple with this quite a bit. And I know our customers and prospective customers do too. And it's a huge part of what happens when you're evaluating new tech, is just really figuring out, how can tech help me scale this personalized experience? But also, I do think there's a tension there. There's for sure a tension that is present, which is like, I don't want to use tech so much or have tech be such a present part of what I do that it kills the human part of the experience and kills the relationship piece. So luckily for me, since you just put this on me, we have a special guest on the podcast today who we hope will help us solve this problem. So no pressure, but we are happy to welcome Laura Holt to the podcast today. Hi, Laura. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're super excited. And so before we dive into this and start solving this puzzle, as Zach put it, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about your background, because Laura is bringing to the podcast just such a wealth of experience in wealth tech and fintech and working with advisory firms and helping them figure out what is the right tech stack and where do different solutions fit. So we're really excited to get into this. But maybe first you could just give a little bit of background and some of your experience that you think is tied into kind of how you hope to help us talk through this puzzle today.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I started my career at Morgan Stanley as a financial advisor back in 1999. Very pulled to this industry because whether we like it or not, money creates opportunities and experiences in our lives. And that has been my passion project and my reason for waking up in the morning. Lots of evolutions in my career. But most recently, I started my own business called WealthTech Matchmaker, specifically because every time I sat down with a financial advisor, they would say to me, I have so much technology, I don't know what the heck to do with it. And so my current passion project is sitting down with financial advice firms, understanding their business strategy, their unique business model, and then matching them to the right partners to help achieve their business goals, at the same time maximizing the value of their current technology spend. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm loving it, helping advisors connect to clients in a more meaningful way.
That piece is a great jumping off point to help us with this puzzle, as we were talking about, right? So how they think about technology to deliver / enhance a really good human experience.
Absolutely.
And Kelsey and I have, as we have conversations with advisors, sometimes there's this hesitancy or fear that any form of technology is actually going to remove that. It's going to harm that. It's going to, degrade the thing that they correctly identify as what makes them valuable to their client. So can you talk a little bit about that piece and how maybe you see that in your day job as you talk to these firms?
For sure. And I think that syncs right in with AI. Everybody is very interested in AI, but we have no idea what that actually means on a daily basis. And for sure, what I know is that AI is here to take over those repeatable tasks that none of us want to do, that none of us, brings joy to our life. AI is there to be those repeatable tasks and help advisors and support staff do what they do best, which is connect with humans. One of my great friends uses this phrase is we want everybody in a financial services firm reaching up, doing what they do best. And so when we're thinking about technology, AI, etc., is to think about what are the manual things that you do on a day where you feel like this little bit of I don't want to do that. What are the things that your support staff does on a daily basis that are repeatable tasks that, it's sucking, energy out of their life and blocking them from doing what they do best, which is connecting to clients. And that's where to start the conversation. There's lots of, salespeople calling you and demos you can do. But where I would start with a firm is say, what are the daily just manual time sucks on your life? And then let's figure out how to plug technology into that to take that away and help you do what you do best, which is connect to humans on a daily basis.
Yeah, that's a great jumping off point. And I have a follow-up question for you, but I want to make the distinction between I think it's pretty widely accepted now that tasks that are really not tied to the client-facing relationship are a great place for firms to find as clear a way to streamline and automate things as possible. So for example, billing processes and some of those types of things, any sort of auditing or recon or whatever, right? Those are things that are okay, yeah, we should definitely streamline that with technology. And there's no longer that pushback on that piece that I think many years ago, maybe there was, but it really is when you're saying things that are kind of sucking the life out of the firm or of the people of the firm and are not really driving that in the room experience, there still is tension, I think, within the back office processes that support that. So in planning, tension around the back office, prep work and all of the stuff that goes into preparing for that meeting. And I think it's simply because it means you have to make a decision you have to be consistent and you have to commit to these are the things that we want to streamline or automate something. You have to decide on a process that works across your business or at least a few different variations of that process. So maybe you could talk a little bit about where you run into this is are firms now easily identifying those opportunities and they want to kind of commit to streamlining, or are you still feeling tension on that even if it is really not client facing in the moment, you know what I mean, when it's being done?
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully that makes sense.
I think you're exactly right. And the way to test case this, absolutely, our customer experience is very precious and we don't want to mess with that. We want to learn and test in the back office. And so think about the onboarding process. A client is going to send me, X amount of files, and in the old world, a human would go through trust documents and account statements and et cetera and summarize those. In the middle world, then we're going to use technologies like OCR, who's going to take that and put it into a digital process, but still then we need technology to come in and interpret that. I think where AI can come in is to take those digital documents digest them. It's programmed for here's the 10 questions a support staff would ask about those. And it can summarize those, put them in the right documents, and do that so much faster. And so humans are still on building that relationship, but it's really that like the relationship manager, the support staff is going to have this other assistant that's technology based, that's very efficient, that can take that and make them look like a superstar. And again, everybody's reaching up to the best of their license.
I'm curious how you think of, as you just laid it out there, the things that an advisor fears the least about what it's going to mean to the experience to the client are the easiest in theory to solve for. In other words, all the things you just articulated, right? So anything that really doesn't touch the experience layer, that is all the behind the scenes messiness, like Kelsey's billing example, or how do we ingest documents and get them into the right storage within our systems and populate fields and so on. But I'm curious, like, where do you see the line when you talk to firms where you see maybe that panic set in of, wait a second, if that's going to mean that I need to say this to this human person who's my client, or it's going to mean that I have to put this next meeting with a prospect will therefore need to fit within these parameters. Can you talk through that where, you get through those, like, these are the things we know we can automate that you're not going to panic about because it's not touching, the person you're trying to build the relationship with. But when does that set in? When do you start to see that when you get deeper into the tech stack?
Yeah, so for sure. So one thing I'd love to clarify is, so think about ingesting, interpreting documents, and setting up next steps. That actually does influence and change in a great way that advisor-client experience. So
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but this is basically, I'm excited that this is your answer because that's where I was hoping you were going. Kind of everything's part of the experience. So anyway, I won't steal your thunder. Keep going.
Exactly. And so to reiterate what both were saying is, so if I get a pile of documents in old world days, I'm going to say, okay, we'll get back to you in a week. Right? This enables an advisor to say, you know what, we can get back to you by 2 to 3 days. And that is great. The old saying of never let the sun set on a sale, never let the sun set on a relationship. The faster that we can get back in a more informed way, it does. It's behind the scenes. So it's a comfortable way for advisors to bring AI technology into their planning process and to be better, to be that bionic advisor, to say, it's not going to take us a week to go through this. It's going to take us, obviously, 30 minutes, and then we can get back to you tomorrow. And then as you build this technology from the behind the scenes, then there's more and more ways that you can bring this to the front of the scenes. I think also, being in financial services, because we're so highly regulated, because we're dealing with people's money that affects their lives and opportunities and experiences, we are culturally very conservative, rightly so, should be that way. But I think that we should also recognize that we're living in a new world where clients expect us to have that same experience that they have when they go to Amazon, when they go to Google, etc. And it's not the same because we're more highly regulated. It's not that we're dealing with very secret, private information, but it's that same experience that they expect from us now. It's a higher level of client expectations.
Yeah. And we're going to get into, I think, hopefully, like the higher client expectations a little bit and how firms can build their tech stack. But this is actually, you've teed me up for the first opportunity I've had to bring up a talk that I listened to at Future Proof in Colorado that has been bugging me. So I wasn't planning to go here, but here we go. And Zach's probably heard me. I'm grappling with this talk, like, since I heard it. So Kitsy's did his talk at at the Colorado Future Proof, and I listened to it. And basically he was talking about how operating margin hasn't meaningfully improved in the last 10 years, even with all of the tech innovation. And he attributed it to, or his team has attributed it to, the fact that tech has mostly been used to improve the offering itself, not to enhance advisor efficiency in the core offering of what it was 10 years ago. So now we're offering tax stuff, and we're offering estate planning, and we're offering much more comprehensive financial planning and all these personalization and everything, but we haven't actually made more efficient the core thing that it was 10 years ago. Or we have, but we've done that, and then we've just added more services to justify the fee, basically, was the initial point. Then he went on to say that that was kind of the right thing to do, was what I took away from it. And sorry, Michael Kidsies, if I took away the wrong thing. But basically he talked about shrinkflation. He was like, how can we justify charging the same fee for less time spent? And he essentially calculated the hourly rate. If we were to just keep increasing advisor efficiency and decreasing the time spent, basically, I guess that those are the same thing. But he basically was like, this is shrinkflation. This is like getting a bag of chips that has less chips in it, essentially. And the issue that I had with it, well, I had many questions, but one of it, I was like, is it a commoditized service? Like, is this really in the mind of the client an hourly calculation? In my experience, it's not, because it really more is about the experience and the value and the expertise, similar to other professional services almost. But then those other professional services do charge an hourly fee, like a lawyer or what have you. So then I was kind of stuck in this grappling with this input from him. Anyway, I don't know. That's my random ball I'm going to lob in the middle here of what are your thoughts on how investors perceive time spent, and do they care about how much time is spent preparing their plan? And would they not, for example, would they say, okay, well, if you're spending 30 minutes uploading my files instead of 5 hours, then you should spend 4.5 hours with me? Or are they just happy with the outcome, is I guess the question. Because I know my answer to this, but I would love to hear your take.
I feel like this is kind of a layup question, so I appreciate it. It's the whole change in the industry from the time that I started to today. It's going back to that impact of wealth. So when I started as an advisor, advisors were focused on, every quarterly meeting was on the performance. And there was the old commercial back there from a firm that I will not mention, but it's like, what is your number? Which I hated. And there's not a magic number, right? And this is the magic that an advisor does with a client on a daily basis, is that impact of wealth. We're not trying to drive you to this. It is, what is the one unique life experience that you want to have? And that is the value that an advisor brings. The fact that they can spend less time on putting together a portfolio, a customized portfolio, like with seeds, the less time that they can put together digesting these documents, and the more time they can spend on the unique value they bring as a human advisor to human clients, that's where the value is. And that's where we've been experiencing these shrinking margins, right? And now we're at, I feel, a fair fee and a fair value, but the value that we're using is technology to do all these manual tasks that was overburdening advisors, distracting them from what is most important and most valuable to them. And now that value is truly attributed and paid for what they're doing to help understand your unique life, how to do planning, how to invest your securities, dollars according to that, and really focused on the most important things is impact.
Yeah. You know what? It's funny because as you were speaking, you're helping me process this talk, Laura, because as you were speaking, I was thinking this is why I was on the one hand, kind of unsettled coming out of the talk, because I was on multiple things. So I don't think that we should be comparing hours to hours and the hourly rate and doing all those calculations. But also I was unsettled because I've been working in tech in this space for 10 plus years. So then I was like, well, is tech not doing its job? But then I got excited because, to your point, are we at the point now where the service offering is justified, and we've done enough technology wise to be able to deliver through one firm in that one relationship enough value to justify the fee? And now it really is time to start looking at advisor efficiency and how can you serve more clients in just as meaningful of a way, more efficiently, basically, or more client. What do I always say, Zach? I always talk about this. It's like, I want to serve more clients, but just the same. Like I want to serve them exactly the same, but just more. We should be able to do that now, and tech should be able to fill that role. And I'm excited about that because that's where Seeds is trying to fit in, and maybe it is the right moment for that. But I'm curious your thoughts, or Zach, obviously.
Well, the like confluence ideas or trends that I continually think about, because I'm trying to play this out. You push out these concepts 10, 20 more years. And the McKinsey study and all of this data that says people not decreasingly, increasingly want human advisors. But we also inherently know, and data supports, that the customer knows that a lot of the outputs from a planning perspective, in terms of planning tactics, in how portfolios in theory are constructed, and certainly pushing it out further and further, it's all commoditized. That stuff is, you can type into ChatGPT when and how to do a Roth conversion, for example. So in the extreme, what people want and what they value is, yes, the output. They need the output, the tangible financial plan, the tangible portfolio. But it is the fact that the human person is the interface to those things, and the actual understanding and relationship building and communication. I guess a long way of saying, like, we should be presuming that the customer already kind of knows that you are hyper efficient and commoditized behind the scenes, right? Like that would
you're like
be
a
my
consultant.
expectation.
Yeah.
That would be my expectation as the customer. Like, I know that and hope my advisor is using Seeds and using other AI tools and doing all these things so that they can be hyper focused on making me feel really good because they understand me, and they are the nucleus. They are the hub of this information, and how they're sort of layering it into my life with actionable things to be doing. But like, I don't care, and I hope that they're not spending 1 second on doing any manual anything, even as it relates to their expertise. Like, if my advisor is using ChatGPT to confirm that the Roth conversion makes sense, I'm cool with that, because like, that's not what I'm hiring them for. Anyway, now I'm just ranting. But Laura,
yeah, I feel the same way. Yeah, I feel the same way. And that's why I was so surprised. And then a lot of people had a lot of questions about this. Like, should we be reducing the fee? If, like, there were all sorts of questions being thrown around, which I thought was interesting. So, I would love to get your take.
Yeah. So a theme that in line with this that I'm seeing across all firms is so that now that I'm an advisor with this technology, it doesn't take that much time to onboard a client, and I can do financial plans faster, etc. Then it moves to, what else do I do at that time? And how do I elevate my role? And that goes to what I call proactive planning. If an advisor has an hour to prep for a meeting, absolutely, they're going to be their best. They're going to go into the proactive things. But as the volume of clients that you're taking care of and life comes in, that's where technology can help to make sure that we're doing our best, even if we only have 5 minutes to prep for a meeting. And so how can I take all the facts that I have, summarize it, and help me to be on the forefront of my foot versus the back of my foot, and be a proactive planner? How can technology streamline that? Here's where a lot of people are going to hit different financial milestones. Here's where, based on your specific situation, not necessarily everybody that's your age, etc., on your specific situation, what are you exposed to? How should we plan for cancer? Is that a high risk for you based on your history? Is it a low risk based on this? And how can we be proactive planners? And that's where, like, the excitement comes from all of us that started this industry, is to be able to anticipate what the client didn't even know might be a problem.
Laura, can we dig into, we started on this thread, so I want to come back to this and I'll maybe just kind of frame it from selfishly from Seed's perspective a little bit, and when we have conversations with advisors. But then I really want to hear, like, you were at a wealth tech that I think some similarities in what we were offering in supporting all the humanness and the engagement. But again, back to this idea of like everything supports the experience, even, and I'm so glad you pointed out what I'm hoping you were going to point out, which is even if you're creating these little back office efficiencies, then that is surfaced as experience to the client. But when you really start to wade into sort of meddling with, or as the advisor might perceive, meddling with their interactive moments, the real human to human conversations, there is this underlying fear. So with Seeds, the premise is, can advisors better understand an investor in a three-dimensional way? Mm-hmm. And then take all that information and tie it to a personalized portfolio outcome, and then have deep, engaging conversations about that portfolio that reflect all that understanding about them. And so, our users who are using the platform, what they love about it is that it is creating scale for them to do that and have that human experience and conversation and deepness around the investment management part of what advisors do. Advisors who maybe haven't started using the platform yet sometimes have this reaction of, well, I do that and I don't want technology to get in my way of that, which is sort of interesting or kind of ironic, right? So I'm already doing that. And then our pushback or question is, well, but how are you scaling that? How would the next advisor in your firm be doing that? If you're doing that in a qualitative way, how is the next advisor going to do that? Or even yourself, how are you really ensuring that you're doing it not just with the Smith family, but with the Joneses, and it's not sort of unintentionally random that what you're delivering around that is actually, not the same. So again, can you talk about, and maybe your experience in your former firm or what you're working on now, how to talk through that with advisors, that like, how do you make that transition from technology specifically trying to elevate and put guardrails around the humanness and not take away from it, but where the perception is the opposite, if that makes sense?
That makes total sense. And with every firm that I work with, there's a core philosophy behind their investment policy. And you can program that into technology like Seeds and say, this is where we start from. Every client that you work with is very unique. And so then you can tweak that. But instead of sitting down and spending an hour working on customizing this portfolio, I have this space, I have this technology, and then I can tilt my portfolios toward this specific investor, this specific relationship. And at that point, the advisor becomes truly an advisor, understanding their family, their needs, and I'm going to spend my time on my most important use case is getting to know them and getting to impact. And then technology, I'm starting not from zero. I'm starting from this space where it's my core philosophy, and then tilting that portfolio to their unique needs. And that's where every advisor wants the time savings.
I think you probably see that to be true. That opportunity is true across other areas of what advisors do, right? Like our business is focused on this investment management component. Mm-hmm. But when you think of, AI and sort of broader financial planning, there's the efficiency layer, which I think has been sort of phase one of AI, right? Do all the things that you talked about at the beginning, of the things that advisors are least concerned about, affecting directly the customer experience, all the back office stuff. But how could the way you deliver every aspect of a financial plan be elevated or more, humanized by technology, rather it, again, being somewhat random where, oh, I remembered so-and-so had a health scare and I should bring that up and think about what that's going to mean from a planning standpoint, or oops, I forgot, and not having not having guardrails around how you surface information and how you talk about planning at the right points in time. So yeah, I would imagine when you go into firms, that initial experience layer is easier to coach them through, but then having them think about how do you not replace yourself, but enhance what you do on the human side to enhance the experience. That's what you have to push them toward.
Yeah, when I'm working with a firm and we're talking about how to increase advisor efficiency, increase the client experience, there's two questions. Number one is, what are the top 3 repetitive tasks you do on a daily basis? Number 2 is, if you didn't have to do those, what would you be doing? And start from there. Technology can automate those repetitive tasks, and possibly technology can complement those other things that you wish you had time to do.
It's interesting when I'm working with advisors, a lot of times I do kind of make a parallel to the experience that they're going through working with me. And so I used to do this a lot more in my previous role at a much more established company where we had just tons of customers, right? And we really had to scale that personalized onboarding experience. So that kind of desire to make it feel good and make it feel personal and make it feel human. How do you do that in a very scalable way? Tech companies have to do this because of the growth trajectory of tech companies. So it's always interesting to kind of pull it apart and give tips from that perspective. But one of the things that I talk about a lot is how those magical human moments are really fueled by categorization and by decision making that happens before the meeting even occurs. So if you can isolate as a firm, these are the best moments that we've had. These are the moments where our humanness really shines. And by humanness, let's talk about what that means. That's not just delivering expertise as a person with a mouth. That is presence. That is having presence. That is having empathy, and that empathy and presence is fueled by your human experience, and all the other meetings you've ever been in are serving you in that moment, right? So how do you show up like that in a meeting? And I do think one of the unlocks that I've seen is by talking through the only way you can do that if you're going to do this at scale across multiple advisors is by deciding how all these other things happen outside of the room, basically. And in order to do that, especially if you're going to serve more than one ICP, you're going to have to make some decisions around where we want to be consistent outside of the room so that people can walk into the room prepped and ready to be present and ready to just listen and react. So I'm curious your thoughts on if you ever, and I don't know for sure because we've had conversations, Laura, but I've never experienced WealthTech Matchmaker. I'm curious how deep in the weeds you get in terms of tech consultation versus process and people consultation. Do you kind of find yourself, because I can't help myself, we're here to do seeds, but I can't help myself. So I'm just curious how frequently those things are kind of bleeding together for firms and for you when you're trying to really provide advice and consultation to them.
They're hand in hand, just like you said. I start where a firm is. So if they want to start on the tech side, we'll start there. But then I bring in the human side of that. If people are on the human side, I'm that's great, but we need to back it up with tech. It's hand in hand, but I start where the firm is. And on top of everything that you just said, something that's very important and I'm very passionate about is I feel like financial advisors have been very focused on people that are very numbers oriented. So whether you're in a couple, no matter what that couple looks like, there's generally a numbers person and they deal with the bills. And then there's the social person and they deal with all the social things. And that's how they match together. And I'm every time, regardless of the firm that I'm working with, I'm sure that you have a really strong relationship with those numbers people of your household, but how are you reaching that person who's more the social connector of the family? And is your process not just focused around performance, but around the impact? How do you welcome that person into meetings and make them a participant in it? And that is the fact of talking more about the impact of your investments, the impact of this financial plan, not just the numbers, not just are we 90% of the way going to make it and our performance looks great, but what does this mean to our family? What does this mean to this legacy that we're building? What's important to you about money and wealth? And so how I approach firms is meet them where they are. Whoever contacts me, I meet them where they are, but then think about the bigger picture. And I think that's how advisors, successful advisors do this as well, is the number person is going to contact me. I'm going to talk to them about numbers, but then I'm going to ask them those other questions to bring in that other partner in the relationship so that way it really truly is a long-term partnership. If something changes, I still have a connection with that family.
Laura, before we wrap, a sort of similar question, maybe asked a different way. And, because it's something we talk about a lot, especially, advisors go to conferences, the rise of AI. There's a lot of shiny object stuff out there right now, right?
Yeah.
There's so much noise around technology, and you need to have this, and you need to have this, and you need to have this. And there's sort of like a FOMO element to some of it sometimes. So I would guess when you go into firms, they may have some of that. Some of that may be at play when you walk in the door. Mm-hmm. And they're saying, hey, we saw this. We want to take a look at this. We want to do this. This looks really cool. And we heard this advisor's doing this. And this shiny object, or really like silver bullet mentality of like, oh, if we just get this piece of technology, it's going to solve all of our underlying problems. And, it doesn't. So I'm curious, how do you get past that point, right? How do you kind of, get to the foundational stuff you just described, like, but maybe where that's the starting point?
Yeah, great question. So generally that's where conversations start. There's this shiny object. We're excited about it. How do we do this? I old school back up and say, okay, what does your current technology experience look like? What's your current client experience look like? How do we maximize the value of that? There may be some resources that are not being used. And there's two answers to that is there's not enough training, adoption, customization, integrations. So we need to do that in order to get the value out of it, or it's just not valuable. Okay. And so now we've done some cost savings. And then now is that shiny object? How does it fit into everything? I feel like 80% of the conversations I have right now go back to data strategy. What's your data strategy? How do we maximize that? And how do we use that data to service clients better, to help advisors know what their next best action is, to understand what should be the next step in the client experience? So a lot of times we start with this really awesome, exciting, AI project, but we need to back up and fix those foundations or focus those foundations before we add something in. And then that helps when you do make that capital expenditure. It's integrated. It's aligned with your client experience. We have a training plan. We have this. And my whole value prop is maximize the value of your tech spend for the impact of the client.
I'm going to refine this snarky tagline, but it's like, before you vibe code your new tech stack as an advisor with no engineering background, know what your value proposition is. know what your baseline processes need to be. And we talk a lot about, even for seeds, when we go into these firms, hey, we get it. We're a shiny object too. We hope people are excited about what we're doing as a piece of technology that can fit into a tech stack. But as Kelsey was saying earlier, like even we want to be careful selling into firms when there's so much messiness that hasn't been solved foundationally yet. I had an advisor, today I had an advisor respond about needing to reschedule a meeting. about seeds and bringing seeds into their business because he wasn't ready, because he's still figuring out some baseline process stuff. And for us, that's a good thing. I'd rather go into that firm when that firm has figured some of those things out. And even when we come into those firms to, as Kelsey said earlier, to really maybe even help them further refine outside of the scope of our technology. Because without it, it's, as you've seen, and advisors kind of need to make sure that foundation's in place.
Culture and timing. Those are my two words. Like when I meet somebody new, do we have the right culture? Am I going to be able to help them? And then is it the right time? And I think that's the same for advisors with clients. Do we have the right culture? Is it the right time? And then you proceed accordingly.
Love it. Laura, this is fantastic. We could talk for hours. Can you share where you are in the industry, where people can find you, conferences and contact info and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So core business is WealthTech Matchmaker. My goal is to help financial advisors have better communications, relationships with clients. I'm focused on the tech side and how that translates into human conversations. You can find me at wealthtechmatchmaker.com. My email is laura@wtmatchmaker.com. On LinkedIn, I am Laura, CFP. Laura Holt, CFP, and I will be at Future Proof. I will be at some very interesting roundtables that are invitation only. So if there are some interesting firms out there that are looking for smaller conferences where you actually get to do some working sessions and talk about this rather than just go by booths, happy to extend those those invitations. And thank you for this time. I'm a big fan of Seeds, and I'm happy to support and excited about everything you guys are doing.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate all your insights. We'll put all the contact info in the episode notes as well. Thank you, Laura, and everybody. We will see you next time.